What if I was to tell you that we're making our lives difficult? What would be your response? What if I was to tell you that your life should be easy? What would then be your response? What if I was to say that the simplicity of life is rooted in how we engage in the world by building and nurturing relationships and not recreating the wheel? What if I were to say that common sense is the missing ingredient to much of the world's maladies today? What would you then say? Welcome to It's Easy, Son, life lessons on your journey to your promise. This podcast was birthed out of the lessons taught and the outcomes gained by the words of wisdom by former Howard University legendary track and field coach William P. Moultrie. His thoughts are briefly captured in my first book, It's Easy, Son, Quit Making Things Difficult, lasting life lessons from a coach and mentor. We are all in need of words of wisdom and common sense as we navigate this thing called life. We live in a world with a rich tapestry of experiences, cultures, faiths, creeds, and other defining characteristics of citizens around the globe. Join me and my guests as we sit under the proverbial star apple tree of common sense, where we will sit in the cool of the day and discuss how our lives transitions through each stage of development, from youth to college to career, and so much more. We hope to inspire, challenge, and uplift everyone as we pause for an hour each week to see our stations in life through the lived experience of others. Remember, we live in this world together. Why not live in such a way that elevate our thinking while getting back to the basic things that make us world citizens, both individually and as a society? We hope these conversations will be a constant reminder that life is what we make it, and it is truly easy if we focus on one simple truth. We need each other to survive and thrive, to enjoy this world as God envisioned it from before time. So with that, join us now and come along with me as we go under the common sense tree. Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on when we're airing this broadcast. I am excited today to welcome you to another edition of It's Easy, Son. You're taking your life journey to your promises. And today I'm excited because I have with me today a gentleman who, when I came to Washington, D.C. in 1989, I've never met him before then. And actually didn't met him until I graduated from Howard University and started playing soccer locally. But then everywhere I went, I kept hearing this name of this gentleman who has done some tremendous things. And I am so grateful and humbled that he has decided to join us on our broadcast today, because we are going to learn about a career, a life, and quite honestly, a gentleman that if you were ever to see him, you would never imagine the amount of things that he have accomplished. Not only in his career, he's a scholar, he's an athlete, but more importantly, he's a humanitarian who really looks out for people in various and sundry ways. Ladies and gentlemen, today my guest is none other than Mr. Bancroft Gordon. Can't put into words what I would like to describe him. So what we will do is, for the interest of the listeners, we will go straight into a conversation with Mr. Gordon, and we will have him walk us all the way from Kingston, Jamaica, or high school to college to his career. And to keep your interest, I won't tell you what he has done. We will let it kind of morph and be organic in this conversation. So with that, and with no other pauses, or with further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the broadcast today, Mr. Bancroft Gordon. Mr. Gordon, how are you doing, sir?
Hello, I'm doing great, Gerald. Jerry. Can we call you that on the
Yes, you could call me
um,
Jerry. You could call me Jerry. I am so
all
happy
right.
that you're with us today because you see me stuttering for words, and it's really an honor to have you on the show today. And I know a lot of young people are going to be tremendously blessed by this conversation today. So, as I said at the start, what I'd like to do is for us to just to have a dialogue, more so you sharing with the audience your life's journey and where you ended up, and you most recently had a transition that took place in your career. But what I'd like to do is to start out by just asking, tell us a little bit about Mr. Bancroft Gordon. You know, your background, your history, growing up, and things of that nature.
my pleasure. So let me just preface all this by saying to all your listeners, especially the young ones out there, that you, when I was born in the humble town of Linstead, St. Catherine, just outside of Kingston, there was no script for me that I would envision me going to becoming the corporate secretary of Marriott International, who I'm about to retire from in July. Um, it's like, okay, a little country boy from a third world country. You can't have a script that says, here's what you're going to do next and here's what you're going to do next. You'd like to think you can, but basically all you can do is do things, all your basic academic stuff, like maximize your athletic potential, whatever it is that you think you're good at, maximize that. And then when the opportunities present themselves, jump on them. So that at the end of the day, you may have said when you were young, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, or whatever it is. But to get there, there's no script. And the best thing for you to do is to do the basic preparation. Make sure that when the opportunity knocks, you're able to jump on it. And that I can say is what I did in my life. Again, I was born in Linstead to a humble family. My father was a public works foreman. So each of our family members are actually born in different, my brothers and sisters were born in different towns in St. Catherine because he moved around based on his assignment. And then a pivotal thing in my life was around age 9. His older brothers, he had about 8 brothers and sisters. His older family members started, who had no kids of their own. He had 8. At the time it was 4. But
Wow.
they'd actually come in and say, hey, I know you're kind of strapped for cash and probably, be able to provide for your kids in the way that we can. So why don't we take one? And so the 4 eldest actually got farmed out, so to speak, to a brother or a sister. And the one who grabbed me, Aunt Kitty, she was actually my aunt-in-law, my Uncle Horace's wife. She came up to the house and she saw me reading the newspaper at age 7 or 6 or whatever it was, and was instantly struck by the fact that everybody else was playing and I was reading the newspaper. Little did she know I was just reading the comic strips, but she just thought she was impressed by that and thought, okay, let's adopt this one. So she brought me to Kingston and then enrolled me at Excelsior High School, and which became the springboard for my academic and sporting success. At Excelsior, we were blessed to have a headmaster, a visionary guy called Wesley Powell, who actually ended up creating what's called the XED, which is a similar thing to the community college concept here in the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, it was the 6 forms, right? Really 1, 2, 5, and then you go to 6th form, 2 more years of 6th form. But that 2 years of 6th form, he converted to community college concept, which he had learned about on his studies in the States. So during my Excelsior career, I was, again, a little country boy, and I started exploring all my options. And Mr. Powell's favorite line was, "Corpus sane, mens sane." Sound body, sound mind.
Mm.
Struck a chord in me, and I said, well, because the reason it resonated with me is that I realized that, if you maximize your physical potential, your mind gets hungry. A fit body kind of generates a very inquisitive mind, you're fitter, your mind gets agile. It's only from what you do on the field you start thinking about things in a very I don't want to say scripted way because I'm trying to avoid that word, but in a way that you can actually analyze stuff and not get panicky. I mean, what can be more stressful than taking a penalty kick in front of 20,000 people
Right,
if you score? So if you can do that, what's the problem in trying to get an A on your exam in class, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought the two went together, and I've lived by that kind of psychology because my aunt, to her, God bless her soul, she always hated the fact that I was spending so much time on sports. I played like 5 sports. I played soccer, basketball, hockey, field hockey, track and field, cricket.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually my main sport when I started. And, I dabbled in everything else, but I would never sit still. I would always find myself, because, the devil finds work for idle hands. So
Right.
and you know how we are in Jamaica, right? We can
Right.
find trouble if we want it. So I think the way subconsciously I avoided getting into trouble was to always have something positive to do. So school was, again, I had a very thirsty and inquisitive mind. So I read everything, comic books, the Bible, everything. You put it in front of me, I'm going to read it. And that kind of created a base of knowledge. I mean, when I got to Howard, eventually, I remember the woman who taught me Greek mythology said, "How the heck do you know about all these gods before I even talked to you about them?" I said, I read about them when I was younger, Zeus, and I gave her the hierarchy. And
Right.
goodness. And I never had to take a formal class in Greek mythology, but I had read so much about this stuff, the Odyssey and, the Iliad and all that stuff we read as kids. That's on my own. So that thirst for knowledge then also blossomed over into, again, a desire to maximize my physical potential. So by the time I left Excelsior, they made me a valedictorian. They wanted to make me they wanted to make me a valedictorian, but because I was not the orthodox student.
Mm-hmm.
By the time the academic folks realized who I was in terms of my academic achievements, they said, "Oops, it's too late. We'd already chosen this lady who's a A student." They didn't realize I was an A student plus star athlete.
Right.
So they gave me the salutatorian address as my consolation, which was fine because I was not that focused on any particular aspect of my development.
Right.
So I did well in high school, and but then it's kind of weird, and that's why the scripting thing. I mentioned that thing at the beginning. Scripting is not the way to go necessarily, because right after high school, I kind of deviated from the men's part of my mensane, corpus sane mantra to focus on soccer, football as we call it in Jamaica, because I was doing so well, and I got recruited to the Jamaican national team pretty early in my career. I was Player of the Year in 1976, and so soccer was taking over my life, and you know how sports are. Once you become a star, even if you're not making a lot of money, which we weren't in Jamaica,
right.
You become a national symbol, an idol, an icon. You can't go anywhere and hide. It kind of takes over.
Right.
And that sort of was what happened to me. I was kind of becoming this superstar soccer player who was actually neglecting the academic aspect of his mind, of his persona. And that's fine for a couple of years. I did odd jobs because, again, there was no professional soccer in Jamaica. So I taught deaf kids for 2 years, part of the National Youth Program. And then I went to Dennis and Geddes, Brewers and Bottlers, Heineken, Red Stripe, Dragon Stout, all that stuff, and worked at the foreman in the fermenting room. And but that was all to subsidize my soccer career. It had nothing to do with the career path. And I did that for combined 4 years. And then I realized, and my aunt, of course, is always saying, "When are you going to start focusing on your academics? When are you going to pursue this path to become the prime minister?" That was her whole huge vision of me. I'm going to be the prime minister of Jamaica. The little kid I saw reading the newspaper at 6 years old should be the prime minister of Jamaica. That was her view.
Yeah.
And so I had her nagging me in the back of my mind. And then it's interesting, I was recounting to a friend of mine the other day that what really prompted me to move away from this soccer focus was I realized that my friends in high school, some of whom I used to mentor and tutor, were now coming back with their university degrees, right? From the University of West Indies. Some had gone abroad and come back. And I found myself kind of being on the defensive when they asked me, "Well, so what are you doing now?" I mean, these guys and girls, they didn't care about soccer. Again, it wasn't a professional setting, so why are you doing this a hobby? you know, so
Right.
they didn't care about the fact that I was player of the year or the captain of the national team. They said, well, Bancroft, you're the smartest guy in the class. Well, why are you not doing something? And then I realized that, geez, these same people that I tutored or mentored were now looking down on me. In fact, one of them called me worthless. He said, when
Wow.
did you get so
Wow.
worthless?
Really?
And that, oh yeah. And she was the one why, and she meant it well, because she was one person that I actually tutored and mentored through sixth form. You know, she came
Mm-hmm.
from England and was kind of challenged with the West Indian curriculum. And I actually tutored her a lot through her passage, and she became a university graduate and was now looking at me and saying, why are you still a foreman at Daniels and Geddes? And it started to bother me, to be quite frank, because then I realized, well, geez, I've always prided myself on being good in both fields, and now here I am stuck in one. And I started just kind of opening up avenues to finding ways to explore my academic career. By the way, I'd always get into the University of West Indies every year, but you know, the cost of doing it and then the commitment that I have to make, I'd always kind of say, no, I won't be bothered.
Right.
But then when I decided that I'm going to look forward, I said, you know, I can't go to some place where the people who are way behind me in school or in terms of years, I'll be their classmates. So I started looking abroad. And fortunately, a couple of people I knew were at Howard. And that's when my version of your Coach Moultrie came to my life. Coach Lincoln Phillips, the legendary goalkeeper for Trinidad, who is just a marvelous person. He has written his own book, and he's just a remarkable person. But he actually, through mutual friends, came to Sunday dinner with my aunt and recruited me to Howard, where my uncle had gone, and he was always thinking he was the top dog in the family. But oh yeah, I went to Howard, I went to Columbia for masters, blah blah blah. So when the coach of Howard came to recruit me, he was like, "What? Okay, well now you know that's not an easy institution to get into now." And I said, "Well, you know, we'll see what happens." And so Coach Phillips came to to my house, recruited me to Howard, and that made my aunt like ecstatic. Say, "Okay, finally, we're on track here."
Well,
And
can I ask you a question?
oh yes,
When I listen to your work ethic, and I've always heard of your academic accomplishments, and we definitely know about your sporting accomplishments. Both are well known, both in Jamaica and here in the United States. But when you look back, like you just recently, about 3 or 4 years ago, went and did a speech for the RJR radio station Sportsman of the Year Award. What do you see as the young folks, not only in Jamaica, but young student athletes in general, that work ethic that they need, and to balance academics and athletics? There seems to me at least, it seems as if there is a path that says you have to choose one or the other. Whereas the
right.
ones that are excelling at both, they seem to be fewer and far
Right.
between. Is there a generational shift, or were you just unique in that way?
I think, by the way, I always, it's very scary to look back. I told someone the other day, that, geez, looking back, it's more scary because I said, how the heck did I get from there to here?
Right.
So it's kind of nerve wracking. But no. I think it's a cultural thing. I mean, sports in Jamaica, as you know, is a dominant elixir. You know, it's like if you become the Usain Bolt or the Shelly Ann Fraser, you're folklore. You know, you become gods, whether or not you're making money on it. So that's the part that's actually deceptive. If we had transplanted ourselves to the U.S., I probably wouldn't have gone to Harvard for law school, right? Mm-hmm. I would have stuck to whatever my sport was. I would have been the best soccer player, probably one of the top 10 soccer players in my era. But I'd have made a fortune out of it, right? So I would not be looking to my academics. So in Jamaica, it's kind of weird that we have this juxtaposition of very talented teens or youth who have no career path into professionalism. So you do it there are at least 3 or 4 much better soccer players than me in my high school. In fact, I learned from a couple of them, right? And they essentially stopped playing soccer after high school. I mean, they played a couple of years of club ball, but they had to go earn a wage. So they left high school, dabbled in the semi-professional, the non-professional ranks of soccer, club soccer, and then had to go take care of their family. So what we are seeing is in Jamaica now, I think, is that culture of glorifying athletes, regardless of what the outcome are at the end of their rainbow of their athletic life, which is, as you know, very short, has just taken root and has continued over the years. The good thing about the kids who aren't athletically inclined is at least they then focus on our English-based educational system is pretty much top level and can compare to any place in the world. I mean, think about when you came to Howard for the first time, how easy the classes became, right? Because you're like, wait a minute, I did this in first form in high school, right? So, not denigrating the U.S. academic system, but the English system was a lot more rigorous at an earlier age, in my personal view. So I think the kids now in Jamaica are still in that mode of, gee, I'm from the ghetto, I'm from the lower classes. My only way to get some glory is through sports, and if not that, then I'll become an academic person. And so the pathways divide, right? And my thought, and I think you have done some work in this regard, and I'm planning to partner with you and Philip Jow from Howard University, the coach at Howard University, to do something about educating the kids about the possibilities for the eligibility requirements for NCAA scholarships in sports, so that when a kid comes in at first form and a talented athlete, you can say, hey, here's what the program is going to be for you. Focus on your schoolwork and continue to excel in your sports. If you become great in your sport, then you can probably try to go to, the European leagues or wherever you think your skills will take you. Or guess what? If you have a good academic background, doesn't have to be brilliant, but good enough for an athlete or above average for an athlete, there's this other path for you. And that's where 90% of them are going to end up anyway, right?
Right.
So I think educating not just the kids, but the coaches and the sports masters and the principals of the high schools in Jamaica on what this academic path can mean for a student who does well in both fields, it would change the dialogue a lot. I think currently the kids don't even think about this. If you're a talented athlete, you're channeled into sports, and they work them like dogs, and it's getting more professional, like in track and field. Kids now want to be Usain Bolt, right? So they all are all in from day one. They don't care about academics. They just like training all day round, and then they go home tired, and they get up and get by in school. So I would like to see the dialogue change where the kids realize, hey, they're the two. Go back to Mr. Powell's mens sana corpus sana mantra, and realize that, hey, not all of us are going to become professional superstars in sports, but all of us have a potential as athletes to get a scholarship to Howard University if they meet the academic requirements, and that's what they need to hear. I applaud you for that effort. I hear you went down at least twice, right? And I mentioned it to Philip Jow the other day, and I said, hey, we're going to do something in the fall, travel permitting, if the pandemic ever eases up. But but you be a part of that dialogue, by the way. I'll be definitely
any way that I can help.
Oh, for sure.
You left Jamaica and you entered Howard University, and then your legend continued to grow at Howard, soccer and academics. Now, one of the things I definitely would want you to share with the audience is I learned that you came up on a soccer scholarship, but your academics were so good that you went on to an academic scholarship and allowed someone else to take your athletic scholarship. Now, tell me if that's true, or if it's close to true, or help our audience to understand that.
That definitely is. All right, let me back up a bit, because the preface here ties into your book. On my way up to Howard, we were stranded, me and Gerald Hector, my roommate. We were stranded in Miami Airport, International Airport, because of all the processing that took place. We missed our connecting flight to D.C. So the next flight was the next morning. So we said, shoot, we're going to, let's find a bed here on the airport seats and stuff. And that's the next morning, your legendary coach, Coach Moultrie, walking through with his cowboy hat and I don't know why he was at the same gate because we were taking the same flight. and he saw us sleeping on the on the seats, and he stopped and said, "Young man, why are you sleeping? Don't you have a home?" I said, "No, coach, we missed our flight, and I didn't want to take the risk. They're offering us to go to a hotel, but I wanted to take the risk of us missing the flight again, so we decided to stay here." And he said, "That's amazing." I said, "Well, do what you have to do." And he said, "Okay, well, I'm Coach Moultrie. I'm the track coach at Howard." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad to meet you. Do you know Lincoln Phillips?" He said, "Oh, yeah, so he's my comrade in arms. We'd always, we're part of the same athletic program. So, oh, that's great." So little did we know that we made such an impression on Coach Moultrie at the time that later on, after my first year, when I started doing my thing, he invited me to talk to his incoming freshman class, track class. And I didn't even have to say a damn thing. He just said, "Listen to me. How many of you would sleep in an airport in a foreign country, risking life and limb, being harassed by the police?" And on and on. And said, "That's when I knew this kid was going to be a star." And sure enough, 4.0 in his first year. He started with it, on and on. And every year the story get grow and grow, right? Because every year I do better and better. But so that was an interesting entree into the college system. And when I came up here, I left Jamaica as a attacking midfielder. I mean, I was pretty much high scoring kind of a midfielder. And but I was also, two-way midfielder. I don't know whether your people, your audience are familiar with soccer. But midfield is like a point guard type guy, and you kind of connect between the defense and the attack. And we, in Jamaica, I was pretty much a two-way. So I'd attack a lot and score goals, but I'd also defend and protect my defense be the first line of defense, right? So when I got to the States, though, coach had a captain who was a midfielder, so he had to play. And so I was the second guy, and he played a 4-2-4 formation, two midfielders. And then he said, my college roommate, Gerald Dugan, who had recruited with me, he said, well, he has to be on the bench. So I was like, "Ooh, that's not nice." But I knew I could play multiple positions, so I offered to actually play in defense. When one guy, our center fullback, got injured, I said, "Oh, coach, I can fill in there." And I went back there, and the rest is history. Because you probably know me as a sweeper, right?
Yeah, a sweeper.
My legend in the U.S. is a sweeper, mid defender. In Jamaica, when I go back to Jamaica, my club guys hear the story about me being the best defender or, all-American defender. No. You're talking about the wrong person. They think of me as this goal-scoring midfielder.
Right.
But that's how my career drifted from midfield to defense. And it actually was a benefit because between you and me, playing defense in that setup was way easier on my body than midfield. Because midfield, you have to run back and forth. You're all over the place. Mm-hmm. In defense, you kind of just read the game as it comes to you, and then, you go forward as you see fit. So actually, there's a less wear and tear on my body and more time to think about my schoolwork. And the academic part was interesting because when I'd taken A-levels in Jamaica, which is the junior college type thing, but here they didn't recognize that as credits. So I was A-level Spanish. I was way ahead of my crew in my freshman class. Even some French I'd done, and so the academic part I got a jump start almost, and then that kind of helped because it kind of eased me in. I remember Coach Phillips saying, "Okay, now it's take 12 credits. First semester, so you can gradually work your way up and get your GPA up." I said, "Coach, I can't take 12 credits. My mind can't handle 12 credits. I gotta get, it's voracious." So I end up taking maximum credits every year. So I don't know if you realized it, but I finished my academic career in 3 years.
Yes, I heard.
But I had to register. I had to register and audit courses to maintain my scholarship for the fourth year.
Yes.
So I'd audit courses because back then they didn't have the opportunity for you to go to start your master's degree while still playing soccer. I hear that's now a possibility, but back then you were out and done. So I ended up auditing my fourth year, all the classes, and played. But so what happened was because when I came up, I got a 4.0 in my first year, and then someone said to Coach Phillips, "Well, well, why is he on the track soccer scholarship roster? And the woman in the academic affairs said, he's like super qualified to be on an athletic, what they call a freshman athletic scholarship. Academic scholarship, which then gets perpetuated if you keep a certain grade point average, you never lose it.
Right.
So he jumped on that and said, what? So I was the first of his recruits who ever got to that level. So we then once I got into it, I got recruited 2 guys from Jamaica because you could give half scholarships. So 2 guys came up the next year, and I don't want to say I was deliberate, but I selected guys who I knew would also be able to take advantage of this opportunity. And in turn, their half scholarships became full scholarships because they get half academic and half sports. And then eventually they became full academic. And Gerald Dugan, my roommate, also became. So we started a groundswell. I think between my scholarship and Gerald's, we ended up recruiting like 14 people.
Wow.
Because of our, wow. We did a gut check one day and said, well, how many people came up on our one scholarship?
Wow.
At last count, we had 14 guys who would come up because of the benefit of our moving into academic scholarships.
Yeah. So the book that I wrote that started this podcast and the interest from parents and young professionals and young people is around this thing of common sense. And a lot of what you've been sharing thus far, it sounds like common sense, but we don't see that happening more often. Like someone who is academically gifted and highly motivated, saying, and also athletically inclined, saying to someone, hey, look, I'll take the weight of the academics to give you an opportunity. And I think is it too simple to say that it's all predicated upon hard work?
Oh, no. Now, I'm hesitant to respond because a lot of people will see me and the easygoing West Indian personality, and they think I'm like don't have a care in the world, right? They think, oh well, he's just lucky,
right. But
they don't understand all the hard work that goes to making you be able to enjoy your weekend or enjoy your evening or enjoy your golf like I'm doing right now, right? It's you put in the work and then enjoy life. I mean, that's been my mantra. Put in the work so you can enjoy life. That's why I'm retiring at 63. Most of my people are like still slaving away because, I don't think they put in the work
right.
to enable them to then go on to another chapter in their life at a reasonable age while they're still healthy and able to do so. I'll give you a classic example of what you're describing. Gerald's younger brother, Peter, who I'm actually now doing some work with about sports, trying to do some sports development work in Jamaica he came up to us. He migrated. Gerald's mom had brought him up. He got his green card and he got migrated up to the U.S. And he was trying to get a scholarship to Howard, but typically he's exceptionally talented in the soccer arena, but he'd done limited work in the academic arena. Classic athlete from Jamaica, and he was staying in our apartment. So it was me, Gerald, and Mike Pearson, known as Mac P, and 3 scholar athletes, and we are very serious. And Peter would come to practice with us because at off season we'd be playing with Jamaica Nats, the local team that we still run actually. But that's when he would come alive, practice sessions. And then we'd come home and he'd see us buckle down and do our work, and he's like, these guys are crazy. But it's amazing how osmosis works, right? Within a year, Peter had realized that, wait a minute, these guys are having fun, but they are putting in the work to enable them to have fun. So he started getting curious, eventually he got into Montgomery College, where they had a soccer program, thank goodness. But then he started doing the academic. He'd come home and do homework with us, right? So he'd come home and jump in line because I'd cook because the other 2 couldn't cook for hell. I'd cook, and he, go straight to work, do our schoolwork, and within 2 or 3 hours we'd be done with all our schoolwork or extra work that we feel like were necessary to do. And then we start watching sports on TV. So we were having fun, but we were putting in the work first. And he saw that model And then he graduated from Montgomery College, got a scholarship to Maryland University, where he played with Desmond Armstrong, actually, he was the U.S. defender. And his career actually got launched from that. And they ended up he got his master's at Ohio State University.
Wow. Wow.
And he always talks about that. Every time he talks to anybody, he said, if I hadn't gone to that household, I would never, ever have even graduated from college, let alone have my master's.
So sometimes
it's successful academy in Ohio, in Columbus, that he runs right now.
So sometimes it's just being around the right people to keep pushing you forward.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And in our case, we didn't make hard work boring.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen people in the academic realm. Because again, because I'm straddling both worlds, I've seen people in the academic world who behave just like athletes. That was their sole focus.
Right.
And now they can't even jog around. They can't jog around the block because they've just let their bodies go. They're totally unhealthy. So my 63-year-old cohort, I would say 90% of them are very unhealthy, unfit looking. And on the soccer side, the ones who are now broken down because they can't kick the ball anymore, they haven't done anything to maintain their. So you can see from both sides that,
right.
And they don't have any academic fallback,
right.
Apart from the group of guys that I focused on.
Yeah.
And so you can see where poor choices are made by being too tunnel vision.
Right.
And that's what I think is my message to the world here. I mean, don't tunnel vision yourself. Maximize your potential in every way, physically, mentally, athletically. Do it. Don't put limits on yourself. Don't say, for me to be successful, I have to focus solely on ABC.
Right.
Because your brain needs refreshing. You need some outlet. And now we can see that, right? Everybody's doing yoga. Everybody's coming to all these fancy things that they could have been doing when they were children.
Right.
They've gotten themselves into the balanced lifestyle. You wouldn't have to be doing this remedial stuff towards the end of your life cycle.
So let me ask you a quick question. How did you get from Howard to Harvard Law School? How did that happen? How did that happen?
That's a funny story because my thought was as soon as I finished Howard, I was going to go right back to Jamaica and re-engage in my soccer career. But now I'd have satisfied my aunt's desire for me to be whatever, and then start engaging in the local, academic circles and, to make things happen as they would. But I had thought about law school early in my start, just based on some guys I'd seen there was a show in Jamaica called Firing Line, and a guy named Ian Ramsey, a barrister. He was usually, it's a firing line means you come to a bunch of guys or a panelist, some journalists, they sit in front of you, four of them, and then they pepper you with questions, trying to throw you off and, make you look stupid. And Mr. Ramsey was just toying with them all night. He just catch their questions and just deflect them. And I was just watching his verbal dexterity and saying, "Whoa, that's what I would like to be able to do." So I'd always in the back of my mind said, law school is probably what I wanted to do. Even though you spouted out doctor, you want to be a doctor, but I wasn't. By the time I got to Howard, I wasn't in the doctor mode. But law started to intrigue me again. And then I said, okay, let's, in my senior year, I said, okay, let me focus on law school as my trajectory. And I remember Howard immediately offered me a full ride and a teaching stipend and all kind of stuff to keep me there. And I said, okay, that sounds fine. I mean, I love Howard. And I could be a big fish in a small pond, right? So I said, yeah, that's what I'll do. And then I don't know what someone told me. Someone made a mention. I said, why don't you go to the Ivy Leagues? And, in Jamaica, we didn't know, at least back then, we didn't know what an Ivy League was. We just thought of, Howard was like our Ivy League, right?
Right, exactly. The Mecca, right?
All our prime ministers and all our African leaders and Caribbean leaders were Howard graduates. So we thought that was the Ivy League. And they said, no, we're talking about like Harvard, Yale, and Columbia, and they rattled off Stanford. And I said, I never even thought about those. So I went there to manual, you could, investigate school and the requirements for getting into those schools. And by the time I looked into those schools, all of them had said that they only accept LSATs if you take the LSAT, the prep course for entry course for the law school. If you take that in the spring, then you'll be eligible to enroll in the fall. I was making the decision in the fall, so I was going to take the fall LSAT, and they said fall LSATs were not accepted in these schools. And I said, oh, well, there's my out. I'm back to Howard. And then it's funny that I read down to Harvard. Someone said, let me just check Harvard, because I've written down the line, and all the top ones were saying LSAT, spring LSAT, spring LSAT, spring LSAT. So I went to Harvard, and Harvard said fall LSATs are rarely accepted. And I
so there was a chance.
Yeah. I said, well, that's me though, right? I'm a rare breed.
Right.
So, man, I remember writing that application letter, and I threw everything in there about sports. And our prime minister at the time was Edward Thiago, was a Harvard graduate. I threw something about there trying to be another great Jamaican, Edward Thiago, the prime minister, even though I was not necessarily in this politics. But, I just threw that in there gratuitously. And within a week, it had written back to me saying, wow, we want you. And,
exactly.
So I decided to go, obviously. I still at the time didn't even see what the difference was, but obviously I figured out that Harvard is a big thing. And I remember going to a law firm, a local law firm in D.C. I decided to assist minority applicants to law schools in their preparation for what to expect in law school. So I went to one of these prep programs, and the first thing you do is you tell people where you accepted and where you plan to go. And I remember when it came to my part, I was in the back of the room, and I said, well, I'm still deciding between Howard and Harvard. And the whole room looked around and turned to them and said, what? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
So to them, there was no choice. But they didn't realize that, for Jamaican, I didn't have any money to pay for Harvard tuition, whereas Howard would give me a free ride. Harvard gave me a tuition waiver for with a minuscule portion of the total cost. Mm-hmm. And the NCAA gave me a postgraduate scholarship of, I think, about $2,000. And their tuition was like in the $30,000 range. So combined, I ended up having to take loans out, student loans, that would then cover the rest of my costs. So I essentially kind of locked me into the legal system here, for better or for worse, because I had to pay off those student loans when I was done. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that was the circuitous way in which I got to Harvard. And
what was that like? What was being at Harvard like? I spent about 3 years at Cornell, and I know what it's like working there. But what was it like being a student at Harvard? What was that like?
The Harvard can be what you make it. When I got there, I was just my normal inquisitive. The Socratic system that they used in law school, where the professor comes in and asks you a question, and if you aren't prepared, he badger you for the rest of the session until you get embarrassed and cry or whatever people do. That actually was fine for me because I wouldn't say I was a show off, but I liked expounding on what I'd read and stuff. So my first semester was great, and but I remember the first time I realized this place is different is when another minority student came up to me and said, "Oh, it's so nice to hear another black person speak up in class." And I was like, "What do you mean?" Said, well, it's kind of daunting. We all these eggheads here, and I said, "Well, you're an egghead too, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be here." She said, "Yeah, but we are sort of." But essentially, she's saying we're minority eggheads. We aren't in the same league. Mm-hmm. And it kind of affected me. It started to make me start looking around to see whether, am I out of place? Should I be, careful what I say? Should I be? I got a lot more conservative based on that conversation. Mm-hmm. And then I started a family as well. My wife, she had a baby. She was supposed to stay in D.C. with the baby, but she came up right after my first semester. So that, having to balance a lot. But that actually helped me because then it created some more balance. Most of my law school peers were, again, tunnel driven. They're like, this is what we're going to do. We can't deviate. We're going to go to law school. We're going to get into a law firm. We're going to make money, going to become partner in a law firm, and that's the end of it. My life with my wife and kids was a little more human, and I actually played intramural soccer for the law. We had a law school team, pretty much the LLMs, what you call the people doing their Masters of Law. So these are guys from Colombia, from all over the world, Italy, and they had formed a kind of an intramural type team, and we played against Harvard Law, the Harvard Business School, and we played against actually Harvard varsity team. And so, yeah, actually, I got a little following there too.
Oh wow! Now that's new. I did not know that. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, it was amazing.
That is impressive.
In fact, I remember we had a game against the varsity team, and we tied them 1-1, and I scored a penalty kick. And the guys were like, "What is? How can you?" The coach was berating them. How can you make little eggheads from the law school? Because they thought the law school people were all, brainiacs who couldn't do anything.
Right.
So here comes the law school team with mostly LLMs and foreigners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kicking their ass. But we should have won the game actually. But I think we tied 1-1, and that was like a rallying cry for the coach, and they actually ended up becoming a good program. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the other thing that I'm worthy of note in my Harvard career was two things. Every year since I got in, because I made a good impression my first year, they started asking me for recommendations for Howard students to come to Harvard. They'd show me, because I told the Howard folks, hey, listen, don't limit yourself to Howard. There are also opportunities here in the Ivy League. It's not that bad. And so a couple of my prodigies in liberal arts started, pretty much, some of them did pre-law, just regular economics or some other kind of liberal arts course. They started applying to Harvard, and every year, in my 3 years there and beyond, they'd have a Howard graduate come to the law school. And so, that same kind of, keep it going, paying it forward, actually followed me there. But the other story, this was very interesting, is I was featured in Jet magazine as, NCAA scholarship, and saying this guy didn't go to play professional soccer at Howard. I mean, in the Americas. Oh, I forgot to tell you this. I was planning to go to the MLS, not the MLS, but NASL back then, with Pelé, the Cosmos, and all that stuff. And they folded in my senior year. So I still have my draft letter from the the Philadelphia franchise.
Wow.
But they folded. Wow. So talk about closing out your options. So law school was definitely on my radar then. And then I got to I was in Jet magazine, and we had an orientation group leader in my first year, kind of orient the newcomers. And my second year, she asked me to talk to this one guy. She said, "What?" He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, he feels like he's out of place. He's not going to fit in. He's an athlete, and he doesn't feel comfortable, and he's wondering if he should probably go back to a smaller school, even though he's here now." And I was like, "Okay, sure." I talked to him. That guy was Len Elmore, who was a legendary player for the New York
goodness.
And he had had a whole professional career, and now he's going back to come to law school. And I came to him, and telling me, like, Len is like easily 6'11". And we sat down in the cafeteria, and I said, "Oh, man, think of it this way. Everybody here is smart, but you're smart plus."
Right.
That's the way to look at it. You're a smart plus, and you got to work that to your advantage. And you, among everybody here, nobody else has done anything interesting in their life. Very few of them have done anything interesting in their life. So you make that be the dialogue when you get approached. Because he wanted to shy away from sports as a conversation thing. And I said, no. That's a plus. In fact, if you leave school, you can end up becoming in the sports agent world, And he said, "Yeah, I don't want to do that." So then when he did graduate, he ended up working with the New York prosecutor's office for about 2 years, and then ended up working for the legendary, I think his name is Falk. Remember the sports agent?
That was Michael Jordan's agent, David Falk.
Exactly. He started working with him, and then next thing I know, he was on NBA television doing broadcast.
Wow.
Very articulate, obviously, after his Harvard law degree.
Harvard law degree.
But he was almost going to be cowed out of that experience, because he thought he was just he'd be kind of oddity in that instead of making that negative oddity become a positive oddity, he was going to fold it up. But thank goodness the old group teacher leader had the foresight to introduce him to me because she'd seen how I'd handled it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Harvard was a very interesting time. I had to get used to the idea of, getting ready for interviews for law firms and essentially some people say you sell your soul, sort of, but when you're a poor person with a young family, you have very little options to go to a law firm. And between you and me, though, that's a training ground, because nothing you learned in law school could prepare you for actual corporate.
That is correct.
So you could.
The same for accountants too. The same for CPAs too.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things I want the audience to get a sense of is not only the pedigree in terms of the educational path you took, but before we end this interview, I need the audience to understand that you became the secretary for the Marriott Corporation. How did that happen?
Yeah, it was very, again, you just got to be prepared, and when opportunities open themselves, you got to be able to jump on them. When I was left law school, I went to a law firm, spent 4.5 years there. I was, at that time, you have to make a decision whether you're going to be on partnership track, which means the end of your life as you know it. That's all you're going to be doing is law, or whether you're going to go to an in-house experience where you're still challenged, but it's not your only client is the corporation that you work for. Whereas in a law firm, you have multiple clients. If you're going to survive, you got as many clients as possible to bring in your partnership draw, as they say. So so after 4.5 years, I had to make a decision. I said, okay, this is what I really want to do. My daughter had been born, and I said, you know what? And I'm playing soccer now. So I'm playing recreational soccer. I've come back. That's when we met, actually. I was playing for Jamaica Net.
Yep.
You're
That's
playing
when we
for Strikers
met.
or something.
Playing for Strikers,
right. So right. So I said, so all that balancing was getting kind of skewed. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep up the billable hours, which would be necessary for me to continue the partnership track in the law firm. So I moved to a company called Freddie Mac. Actually, I went to the World Bank, and I was about to go to the World Bank because it was, something I could give back to my Caribbean country. And the Inter-American Development Bank was another option. But they both got into a hiring freeze right around the time when they were about to get hired. And again, the opportunity kind of fizzled. One door got closed, and I said, okay, let me go to this other company, which was Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac Fannie Mae, secondary mortgage market participant.
Yep.
So Freddie Mac recruited me, and I went there and spent 16 years. So I was started as a very junior person in the corporate secretary's office, and I gradually worked my way up to the assistant corporate secretary, which is assistant to the general counsel. And I was also the general counsel for the Freddie Mac Foundation, which was actually the fun part of the job because their focus was on underprivileged, providing for underprivileged segments of the society. So that kind of resume build was great. And in fact, I was not planning to leave Freddie Mac because, I made a good mark there, a great career. And they had an issue before the mortgage crisis. They had an issue with an accounting. Your boys.
I remember that.
From Arthur Anderson.
Yep,
Arthur
I
Anderson
remember.
misled them about how to treat derivatives, and they got screwed over. And they kind of turned downward spiral. They got rid of the head guys in the company, and I wasn't that comfortable. The new guys would come in, so I was my eyes were open for an opportunity. And a good friend of mine said, "Hey, because of the Arthur Anderson thing, the Enron crisis had created this new regimen where you need a corporate secretary to adhere to comply with the governance part of these new rules."
Mm-hmm.
And Marriott, prior to then, had been dabbling with rotating litigators or various other people into the corporate secretary role just to manage the board meetings, but no governance advice or compliance advice. So when they were forced to go to a professional corporate secretary, they started looking around, and a good friend of mine on the inside had said, "Hey, get your resume over here, and I could probably push it." So I sent my resume over, and my resume read just like a job because I've done both corporate transactional stuff, securities law stuff, as well as governance stuff. So I got elevated from my assistant secretary level at Freddie Mac to the corporate secretary function at Marriott, and Mr. Marriott just gave me some glowing comments, had me crying on the it was virtual.
I saw it.
Was virtual.
Yeah.
Thank goodness it was virtual. Otherwise, it had me weeping on television.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was very touching. And but I did. I enjoyed the company, and I did my utmost to make them look good. And they appreciate it when you do that kind of stuff. So
well,
so that's my story.
Let me ask you a couple of questions in the time that we have. Last week, I was able to interview NFL great Michael Dean Perry, and one of the questions I asked him at the end, I'll just ask you, because when I got to D.C. and I got through Howard and I was done, I watched a lot of the work you did with the young people. You run the Jamaica Nats organization, right. But I get the sense for you it's more than just coaching a soccer team, because I look at the young men that comes through that team, and oftentimes they come in as stars, but they might be lacking focus. Yeah, I played on a opposing team, but I've always watched the young people gravitate towards Jamaica Nats whenever they get to DC. Can you talk to us a little bit about your sense of community and mentoring and helping young people make it through? What's your philosophy there?
Yeah, okay. So when I took over, when I came back from law school, that's when I rejoined Nats, and we had a kind of a leadership vacuum. So I kind of just jumped into it, and the Nats, Howard had actually moved away from recruiting directly from Jamaica by the time I got back. The new coach, Tucker, he's more U.S. centric, the high school process here, and Bermuda, where he's a native Bermudan. So he started recruiting separately, differently than Coach Phillips did. So we weren't getting that pipeline. Nats wasn't getting that pipeline of Howard University graduates into the soccer team anymore. We were just getting immigrants. People would come here just because their parents had brought them up, or they just came on a soccer trip for maybe the national team and decided to stay, whether they were legally able to or not, they'd stay. So Nats became more of a subculture. The players we were attracting were like a subculture. And as part of my effort to get them out of that subculture into the norm of society, I had to kind of groom the ones who had the aptitude to get scholarships. So that was my main focus, trying to get these guys to go to junior college, go to get into Montgomery College, Prince George's College, and if they were young enough, get them to high school and get them onto a track to get these scholarships. So that was my focus at the beginning. Now, the ones who were already beyond help in that regard academically, I had to find ways to get, because the lure of the street is ever present, and DC is not. It's almost like Kingston, right?
Yep,
you can
absolutely.
find trouble wherever you look, and I had to find a way to get these players to say, hey, you have potential to do something greater than the drug lords are offering you, and that's when I started getting my link with DC United, because professional soccer had come back.
Right.
Again, the story of my life, right? A whole generation I missed out on, but here are these young guys who had access to professional ranks, and I started focusing on, hey, the only way to get into this thing now, you're going to look just like these college athletes, because that's what they're used to seeing. Well-deported, well-trained, well-behaved college athletes who are trainable, and you can't go in there acting like a thug. And so that carrot was dangling, and I was able to get them motivated. And we ended up with, I think we had, at one point I was counting, we had 4 MLS players. Donnie Maxwell, Garfield Shaw, Juan Leff, and we had Greg Simmons was not. His cousins were more into our program, but he became part of the Nats group, and he ended up in the pros as well in Orlando. And we had another bunch at the second at the second division level, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we had 13 guys in the pros in 1 year,
Wow.
which was amazing to me. But of all the guys who I remember in terms of what I've done for young people, is this one guy from Montego Bay, rough, raw, tug. You describe it. You see him on the street, you'd want to run just by looking at him. In fact, I remember him getting a red card from a yellow card from a referee before he made a tackle. He said to the ref, "Why do you give me a card?" He said, "I saw the intent in your eyes, and I wanted to stop you before you start." So, you know Patty too. Patty used to play the strikeout. Patty came one day, and I said to Patty, he said, "Hey," he called me lawyer. He said, "Hey, lawyer, I like this girl, I don't know if she likes me. I'm trying to go on a date with her." And I said, "All right." He said, "When you pick her up, go around and open the door for her, the car door, and just things go from there."
Right.
He came back the next day and said, "Hey, lawyer, I want to tell you, same night I got her the same night." I didn't go into the details of what he got. But but that's the little thing.
Yeah.
And so he started behaving and started teaching his kids to behave that way. And that's the kind of joy I get out of seeing people improve themselves. So. Yep. And and very few of these guys have people coming back into their lives. They're fatherless. They're raised by mom, single mom, and usually the people they see in adults aren't people who are trying to support them. Right? I'm watching on TV right now these damn riots. Right? A lot of kids just don't have people who can touch their lives and show them a better way to success. So the current Nat scheme, as I said, I have a bunch of kids. They're working at Popeyes. But they have a regular job, If they have a need, they'll come to me and ask me for something. But I'll always say, "Hey, you need to pay me back," or whatever. Something. I know I'm not going to get paid back, but that's the kind of contract you kind of work with them to make them improve themselves.
Well, Mr. Gordon, we are at time. We could be on the phone for a whole 4 hours, if possible.
Right, of course.
But I am extremely humbled and grateful and thankful that you would spend some time with us on our program. And, this program is about trying to get young people, young professionals, and folks who are trying to find another way. And what you have laid out here today is exactly what the tenacity that needs to take place in the lives of so many people. And I just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us and sharing. And I'm pretty sure that this particular interview will inspire a number of people, both in Jamaica, here in the U.S., but more importantly, just young people in general, seeing someone, hearing about someone that you could just pass, as humble as it can ever be. You could pass on the road and not know that this person has accomplished all these things. So, Mr. Gordon, I thank you so much for joining us, and we will be in touch. Ladies and gentlemen, join us next week when we will have another exciting guest. Won't reveal the name this time, but we will be back on the air next week. So until then, enjoy your week, and remember, it's easy, son. Quit making things difficult.